Okay, thank you, and welcome everyone. I have to remind you of the following, just for our rules and regulations. This meeting is being live streamed to YouTube for the general public. All audio and video is being captured and recorded. And in order to participate in the meeting, your video must be turned on. When you are not the active speaker, please ensure your microphone is muted so there isn't any background noise. If you do need to speak, please raise your hand so I can call on you before you unmute. Does anyone have any questions? With that, let's get started. Don, will you call the roll, please?
I will.
Thank you.
Whitney Allen. Deborah Aparicio. Colby Burks. Rochelle Brown. She's present. I saw
Present.
her. Okay.
Present. Unmute
David
AR.
Carpenter.
Present.
Robert Croft. Alfonso de Torres Nunez.
Present.
Letitia Robertson. Robert Statt.
Here.
Terrence Sullivan. At this point, Dr. Statt, we do not have a, Whitney Allen just joined us, so
Present.
he was going to go back. We are looking for one more for a quorum.
I was just going to say, aren't we one short? Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, even though we don't have a quorum, we'll proceed with our meeting and get these scoring aspects finished. But first of all, let me turn it over to Aaron Thompson for his comments. Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Dr. Statt. Good to see everybody. I especially want to welcome Doris Thomas, who is one of our new board members. I thought I saw her on here when I first got on. Oh, I see her now at the top. So we haven't, just to fill you in, we had 3 board members replaced. We had Madison Silvert from Owensboro replacing Donna Moore. We had Karen Hoover from Jamestown replacing Kim Haubauer. And we have Doris Thomas, who's on here, replacing Ben Brandstetter. And Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I would love if we could just have Ms. Thomas introduce herself to the crowd, if that's okay with you.
That's perfectly fine. And do we have, before we go, do we have anybody for Kim?
Karen Hoover replaced Kim Haubauer.
Okay.
But what has happened is, since we don't officially have a chair or vice chair yet, one of those that Doris Thomas is on here, which makes me happy, will be appointed by whoever the next chair is to serve on this committee.
Very good. Doris, go ahead with your comments. They're always appreciated.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clearly.
Okay. So I'm Doris Thomas, and I live in Smiths Grove, which is just a little bit out of Bowling Green. I have recently retired from healthcare administration, and after 35 years, and I'm looking forward to serving on the CPE board. I did serve on the KCTCS board for from 2009 to 2016. That's for the state board. And I actually served on the local board in Bowling Green for 6 years prior to that. So this topic, I'm anxious to learn more about this committee. Certainly the title of it is of interest, and thank you for allowing me to sit in on this today.
You're more than welcome. And President Thompson, it's floor's back to you.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you, Ms. Thomas.
Thank
Dawn, did they provide you with a PowerPoint for me? If they didn't, that's quite okay. I've got it.
They did not.
That's okay. I got it down without one. I want to give you some updates. First of all, the legislative update. We had a continuation budget, as many of you know. And what that means is that the Senate and the House put forth a budget from last year without adding a lot to the budget. So they went forth with a flat budget, if you want to call it that. The difference is that higher education did get money. We were really one of the very few people that got money, and this is the first time in 13 years that we've gotten money. So we're feeling blessed in that regard. We got about $17.3 million that goes to our performance funding pool. Which is about a 2% increase from our base, if you will. And we got about $22.3 million to shore up the employer contribution to KRS, which is about $22.3 million. And additionally, we got money for KSU. So without a doubt, we feel fairly blessed that we were able to get some stuff that we hadn't gotten in 13 years. So that was quite a pleasure. We also, they passed the bill, I forgot the name of the bill, Travis is on here, he probably will tell me, that allowed Simmons College to be able to offer some teacher prep programs to really serve the west end of Louisville. And now Simmons is eligible for the KTG grant. That's another item. You know, the CPE, myself, Travis, Dawn, Amanda will be working with Simmons College, KSU, and others to make sure that we can recruit more teachers of color and get more of those in the K-12 system. And to do that, we have to build a pipeline to make that happen. So overall, higher education came out pretty good by comparison. We're also doing strategic, and Dr. Stat, I'll open myself up to any questions anytime anybody want to ask, but we also are updating our strategic agenda. It's been 5 years, it's hard to believe, since we did the last update, but this time we're going to be moving toward 2030 as our end date, even though many strategic agendas, they keep rolling. 2030 will be our end date this time, which is longer. And we wanted to match that up with our North Star of having 60% of our population in Kentucky with a post-secondary credential by 2030. Now, we've been doing really well, and I'll talk about that in a second, but obviously COVID is going to have a big impact on that. But we will be eliciting feedback from people around Kentucky, we already have been, including our board, around issues such as diversity, equity, and inclusion, college affordability, transitioning to post-secondary education, and transitioning to the workforce, how to engage adult learners, and our P12 and post-secondary partnerships. So several of the items, if you haven't been invited to, several of these items you're open to be a part of, and we will have to have you as a part of it, especially around our DEI issue. And once again, if you haven't heard a lot about it, I'm assuming Dawn will be able to provide that for you. As you well know, we also started the Commonwealth Education Continuum. It was an item that I was privileged to lead, but now my co-partners in crime will be the Lieutenant Governor and the Commissioner of Education. What I believe is for us to have a strong post-secondary system, we're going to have a strong pipeline into post-secondary and into the workforce. Thus, we at this education continuum is starting at the early childhood and running through until we go into the workforce. And we have put together a fairly powerhouse overall arching committee with a lot of subcommittees or sub work groups that will be breaking out, looking at everything from transitioning to post-secondary to early post-secondary opportunities to educator workforce and diverse workforce. So we are looking forward also to having your input on that. Some of the other things that have happened since last time, we got $50,000 from the SHIA organization, State Higher Ed Executive Organization, which I'm a part of, to really do a lot of work toward marketing what we're trying to do around getting adult learners back into the system. We also have a Work Ready scholarship promotion. You probably have seen Be Still of Nappy Roots out helping us to raise awareness around what's going on. We got about $3 million that we are, from the governor's office, we're putting out to do bridge programming from secondary to post-secondary, because we know there's learning loss there, and we know that we're going to have to do a lot to help these young folk catch up to move into post-secondary. We also put out a lot of money this past year around mental health, and we've started a stronger telehealth system. We started a stronger internet-based system where students and other folk can put in and make sure that they're targeted to go in the right direction based on whatever issue that they may have. A lot of those items are clearly around what we've seen during COVID, but we knew existed before. We knew mental health was a huge issue before. We now know it's a bigger issue. So I tell people we were in the middle of doing innovation as COVID went along. We weren't waiting for COVID to end and then talk about innovation. Lots of stuff going on, or, this next coming agenda that we'll have will still have the 4 priorities that I started out with when I came in as president around affordability, making sure we stay an affordable system, especially for many of our most disenfranchised populations. It's around the value proposition. We only have about 50.5% of all students graduating from high school going to college. We've got to make this what I call surely a valuable, not only experience, but the outcomes you get, higher education. We've got to help people to understand that it is important, that it still matters. So I call it putting value back in the value proposition. So we'll still be pushing that. We're still going to be pushing our big ed attainment goal, more degrees and credentials. But as you all know, we have targeted this to focus on the gaps. The argument is that if you focus on those that are in fact of the most need, this is equity, as you all know, then everybody will rise. And guess what we've seen? Everybody rising. And so for the last 3 years, we've doubled down on this, and we're getting the impact that we need. Once again, we're going to probably slow down because of COVID. So we're going to ask you to help us to get out there and do even a better job. Employability, we're going to still we'll be announcing fairly soon. We just hired an executive at CPE that's going to be leading our workforce area. And it's going to be focused on employability, not just those getting a job with great technical skills, but those having those employability skills, those essential skills, soft skills that some people call it, I don't. But those items that helps us to know how to communicate, problem solve, work with people of diverse backgrounds in this global economy and so on. So we'll be heavily working in that area. So I want to just lay out a couple of things that I feel really good about. I told you a little bit about this in the past, but I feel really good about it. our diversity and inclusion. Now as you all know, within CPE, we have 3 people that's in that shop. Many campuses may only have 1. And so we're a much smaller organization, but we know that this is key. This is key to us getting the kind of outcomes that we want. So we've seen some good successes come out of this shop with Dawn and her crew, and I'm proud of it. Our DEI campus plans and metrics, I mean, the satisfactory progress. I had a chance, I know you are going to talk about this later, but I had a chance to look at some of this, these that were submitted this time, and quite pleasantly, I was happy. You know, just seeing the improvement has been just unbelievable. So this is hard work that's been done. I want to thank Dr. Stat and you folk too, because seeing this committee operate the way I see this committee operate, and with the outcomes, my staff all over CPE, but especially Dawn's staff, has been, you know, as someone who's been around a long time, and have seen when this hasn't operated as well as it should. I am a happy president at this time, just seeing what's going on here. Our webinar series, the Higher Equity webinar series, as you all know, is out there. Our all day, I had a chance to talk to this, what I call this up and coming senior leaders in higher education last week, and what a great crew. Our cultural competence certificate, we are right there. We're ready to do it. Something that was a dream in my eye a long time ago, but they now have made it come to fruition and we're ready to go. And this committee is key to all of those things, if you think about it. And this is a huge piece that we've had some accomplishments on, but as you all know, there's just so much more to do in this area. Some of the numbers, just to put it back on your plate so you can think about it. Gap closings, that was the focus of our DEI policy. Gap closing was the focus of our performance funding. And we worked hard to make sure that we had an accountability system around it, a great assessment system, but all of it was built around continuous improvement. So I want to thank our campuses for their work on this, which is unbelievable because that's where the rubber meets the road. But this group, your policy inputs, your process, your assessment, all of this matters to these outcomes. So our total enrollments at our institutions are down about 3%, just to let you know. But our underrepresented minority populations are up 11%. Total credentials awarded at our public institutions, we're up by 17%. Think about that, even in years of budget cuts. We're up by 17.5%. Our URM credential attainments up by 36%. One of the leading states, if not the leading states, in gap closing in America. Our 6-year graduation rates, if you know anything about raising graduation rates, that's not an easy thing. We're up 5.2 percentage points in this state. That's huge. But our URM's up 6.8 percentage points. Once again, closing gaps. Our, our retention rates now around 80%, who would ever thought? But we're closing gaps there too. However, our Black and Latinx students, we still are lagging behind. So that means we're going to double down even more. We saw that COVID brought out this digital divide, right? We knew it was there, but the people that didn't have enough internet and people that didn't have enough power, enough bandwidth was there. But our African-American and Latinx students actually had a larger divide. Our low-income students, a larger divide. This is something we have to think about, something we have to deal with. 89% of those that were unemployed did not have a higher ed credential. So what we're doing clearly is important. Our KCTCS campuses, our enrollment are dropping. That's where we have a lot of our low-income students, a lot of our students of color located. they're dropping in enrollment. We have to double down on making sure that that partnership between P12 and higher ed is there. As you all know, several years ago, we went to a test optional minimum admissions policy. Most of our campuses now have gone there with a lot of wraparound services, but we have to help Kentucky campuses work better with our P12 to get more people in. Our FAFSA rates are down. Some of these people convinced me to do a TikTok, by the way, and just to let you know, I still got some dance moves. If you haven't seen it, you really need to, and you need to join me in doing these things. But we've got to provide students more with what they need, and we got to meet them where they're at. And we've got to move on our campuses from a teaching philosophy to a learner's philosophy. We have to focus on the curriculum as a part of the thread. We've got to build more of these micro-credentials around cultural competence. We've got to figure out how to get more professional development within higher education as a whole. But we have to do this with, actually in mind, quality. So we're not going to do anything purely as a numerical output alone. We're going to build quality as we have already, and we've shown it already within that thread, in addition to building a faster rate of helping our students achieve what they need to achieve and making sure that those that are the farthest behind can catch up faster. And Dr. Stat, I have so many other things I could talk about, but I'm going to stop there and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Aaron. Actually, I've got a couple things here. First of all, on the budget, one of the things that it's maybe a small thing to some, but it's very significant, and that's when you talked about Simmons College. They reinstituted the SREB Scholars Program for educating, advanced education of minorities for a teaching profession, particularly at the college level. So I think that's a noteworthy addition to our budget.
Yeah, there's actually two pieces there. One is that the SREB Scholars training PhD level professors, they did a couple of years ago in a budget. The first budget I asked for, they actually funded that again after many years of not funding it. The other thing too, we're looking at getting more minority serving institutions and anyone who actually wants to get in this game of building a diverse teacher workforce for K-12. We're looking at money flowing into that area with scholarships. And this is where Simmons College got that $200,000 to help get them started. But there's also, we're trying to build a scholarship pool or non-repayable loan pool if they finish to help many of these students get these teaching certificates also.
And actually, you made nice comments about me, but it's not so much me. It really is the committee and the staff at CPE. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Devron Muff, who is now Dr. Devron Muff, for his Doctor of Education from EKU.
Thank you. I think, Dr. Stat, I think Alfonso has a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. More than a question, Dr. Thompson, this is something that may be of interest to you in regard to that pool of scholarships that you were mentioning before, and in regard to recruiting more diversity for our programs, which, by the way, I am very much interested in participate. So if nobody volunteers, I volunteer myself for this. At the national level, a couple of days ago, a national movement that is focused on world languages, which is called Lead with Languages, just announced a national scholarship for those high school students who would be interested in becoming world languages teachers. I am thinking in terms of diversity, because when you come to think about our big ESL, ELL population in K-12 schools, that's definitely a pool that we could definitely target to recruit, not only in the sense of world languages, but also because we are talking as well about BIPOC. So as I said before, I put this information I made this information available to you, Dr. Thompson, if you would like to know more about it first. And second, I volunteer myself for any of those efforts that you were referring before in regard to recruiting diversity.
Thank you, Alfonso.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Travis and Dawn are on here. If you wouldn't mind copying them in, also, they'll be actively engaged in this. We would love to. By the way, in our education continuum, you know, we're putting work groups together. I don't think I've seen your name included in that. So I would love to even submit your name if you're interested to be a part of that work group that's doing that.
I am definitely interested, and I would be very thankful for that.
Absolutely. So I'll make sure Travis and Dawn helps me to remember, because they know I'm old. I don't remember well, you know. But in this case, I promise I will.
And let me say one other thing to the committee in general, because you talked or mentioned about the strategic agenda coming up and that sort of thing. I would like to invite all the members to participate in the Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee. They're always welcome. And this last time we had a very good meeting with Lee Nimitz, where we looked at the opportunity, success, and impact aspects of the current program and where we could head. So if they can have the time, it would be nice for them to join in.
I really appreciate you bringing that up, Dr. Stat. By the way, I heard the meeting was excellent from a variety of sources. So
It was.
I heard it was good on Friday. Wished I could have been there, but you know me, I was fishing. You know, no, I wish. Are there any other questions for me?
All right. Thank you, President Thompson.
Thank you. And I appreciate all the work that you folks are doing. Let me know if there's anything you think I could ever do for you. And Deborah, congratulations, Dr. Muff. I had a pleasure of serving on his committee. He probably thought I was way too rough, but you know, I'm not. I'm an easy pushover.
Okay. Again, congratulations, Deborah.
Thank you.
With this, Dr. Thompson has finished his remarks, and right now I'll welcome Travis Powell to go over the scoring process and any other overview comments he'd like to make.
Well, thanks, Dr. Stanton. And Deborah's going to take over and do the presentation on the scoring process real quickly, because most of you all know that. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to reiterate some of what Dr. Thompson said, and just commend you all on all the hard work that you've done, from folks on the campuses to the ones implementing the strategies, to the ones analyzing the strategies and writing these reports, the ones that are coordinating these efforts, our review teams members. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you did on this. This is a lot of work, but as you can see from the data that Dr. Thompson talked about, it's working, and it is having an impact on our campuses. And we're all partners in this process, the campuses and CP and the CEO staff here. And we're starting to see, this is our third annual review. We're starting to really see the fruits of our labor and all the hard work that's gone into this, and how important it is for all our campuses to do well in these areas. You know, this is not something that started out of a reaction to anything that happened recently. We had all this in place for several years now, and the newest version starting in 2016, as you know. And I'm just so very proud of that, that Kentucky has this infrastructure in place to do all these great things and review the processes and just to show everyone how important this is. So just anyway, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody involved with this. It's a pretty heavy lift, especially volunteers on the board. It is a lot of work, but it's good work, and it's really making a difference out there. So thank you so very much. But that's all I have. Deborah's going to run us through the scoring process this year, and then we'll get into the reporting.
Actually, before Devon gets going, I just want to put 2 cents in because I was on one of the scoring teams, and the effort or the writing and the thought that's gone into it is far better focused than it has been in the past. And I just 3 out of 4 of the ones that I had were just very, very well done. So congratulations to all the schools for really showing great improvement in this process. Devon, go ahead.
Thank you. So with the diversity, equity, inclusion plan report evaluation, so this year we were the annual report for we looked at the 1920 data was analyzed, and so there's 2 parts of the evaluation for our rubrics. There's a quantitative and a qualitative part. The quantitative part is 18 for our universities and 16 for our KCTCS institutions. The 2-point difference there is because of our universities have an extra section because of grad school. There's qualitative part, the portion of our rubrics is a possible 18 possible points that you can get out of that program, and the minimum score for eligibility to offer new programs is a 24 for our universities and a 22 for our KCTCS institutions. So speaking on the quantitative portion of the reports, and mostly today we'll hear about, majority of the time we'll hear about the qualitative portion, but just to give an overview of what the quantitative section is about. There's evaluation progress set that has targets that are set in the following areas, which are undergraduate and graduate enrollment, first to second year retention for URM and low-income students, graduation rate for URM and low-income students, degree conferred and credentials awarded for URM and low-income students, and workforce diversity. So then there's 9 areas for the universities and 8 areas for KCTCS scoring. And then each institution can either score a 2, 1, or 0, a 2 meaning that the annual target was met or exceeded, a 1 meaning the annual target was met, but the value is greater than the 15-16 baseline, and a 0 means that the annual target was not met and the value was less than the baseline. And so then going on to the enrollment portion of the quantitative section. As you all know, that diversity can be defined in several different ways. And so for this section, there is an enrollment narrative. And so what each institution shall demonstrate that the diversity of the student body provides its students with the opportunity to receive the educational benefits of diversity as described in the policy. And so essentially what this portion is saying, our numbers look at URM and low income students, but we wanted to see the broad characteristics of diversity on campuses and give institutions the opportunity to write about that and tell CPE what sort of things that they're doing. And then also, again, the annual targets were set in the following areas of African-American undergraduate enrollment, Hispanic undergraduate enrollment, and URM undergraduate enrollment, and URM graduate enrollment for the universities. A narrative was provided for each campus to describe how the diversity of the student body provides the students with the opportunity to receive the educational benefits of diversity as described in policy. So for the enrollment narrative, all the elements were considered. For the enrollment portion, it's either pass fails, either 2 or 0. And then the universities provided a score for both the graduate and undergraduate diversity. So what we're going to go through in this next portion here is we're going to talk about the qualitative portion of what we'll hear about mostly today. So there's 3 areas outlined in our diversity, equity, and inclusion for the policy. Those areas are opportunity, success, and impact. Each institution's plan identifies strategies designed to meet the goals set forth for each of these areas. But for each focus areas, the reports were evaluated with the following criteria. is they were asked how they implement these strategies with fidelity, what was the analysis and effectiveness of the strategies, and then what were the lessons learned and next steps. And then for the qualitative portion, the 3 evaluation areas were scored in the following areas, which was 2, they met or exceeded expectation. Of 1, they were making progress towards meeting expectation, and a 0, they do not meet expectations with a maximum of 18 points. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pass it over to the team lead for Team 5, Ray Smith, and she's going to describe a little bit about their scoring process.
Devin, before you go there with Ray, for the new members on the committee, the strategies, each school submitted their own list of strategies based on the 3 topics that you said. We didn't give them a finite list of saying, here's what you will do, but the schools themselves built this list up.
Yes, correct.
Go ahead, Ray. I'm sorry. Just wanted to get that 2 cents in that how
you're
those strategies came about.
Okay, thank you. I'm a little nervous about going first because I haven't been a part of this process before. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to learn more about these 4 schools and how they're creating a more diverse student body, faculty and staff for their institutions. This, however, was my 2nd time reading and scoring for this particular set of institutions. And I'm grateful for Alfonso de Torres Nunez and Kathy Garrett for serving on the team and providing thoughtful insights into the process and evaluations. Our first institution was Owensboro Community and Technical College. And this institution provided 18 detailed strategies for creating a supportive and diverse campus. And our team awarded 2s across the board. And we did this because the strategies involved leadership, faculty, staff, and students. They were monitored, they were assessed for effectiveness, and they were fine-tuned where needed. And even in this year of COVID, adaptations were made. What OCCC did really well was take a deep dive into the barriers underrepresented minority students have. And this has led to the development of services to address those needs, including the establishment of a centralized advising and student success center called the Pathfinder Den. And they didn't just do things like address food insecurity, which is really important, or financial insecurity, but they did things like free bus service or address attainment gaps for students from the Spanish-speaking community. They entertained courageous conversations to find out what underrepresented minority students needed and how the college could help, and provided support for our LGBTQ+ community. So more and ever evolving services and programs. And finally, there was an initiative that involved the OCTC president in advancing inclusion and the understanding of social injustice. So overall, this institution took intentional steps which led to meaningful results. Our next college was Southeast Community and Technical College. And this institution has challenges because of the declining population in that area. But based on the strategies presented by the institution, our team awarded SKCTC 17 out of 18 points. However, individual team members assigned some 1s at the individual strategy level that weren't reflected in the combined scores. Once we averaged out, most things came to a 2. But here's some highlights. The institution successfully used dual enrollment to bring students into the campus and programs, and they also made an intentional effort to infuse an appreciation of diverse cultures into the curriculum. Here are some of the areas that our team flagged as possible opportunities for more analysis. The institution looked at their data and found that underrepresented minorities perceived the level of support from the college lower than white students did. However, they did the analysis and they made sure that underrepresented minorities were aware of the services and how to engage them. But we would suggest that they take the initial step to identify some specific barriers that are faced just by those underrepresented minorities. One area that was touched on in the report was, and that the committee thought that could be further explored, is the area of service to those with disabilities. After all, there are people with disabilities within any of these underrepresented groups. For example, the committee wondered if there might be an opportunity in the region for American Sign Language with transition to the EKU American Sign Language program. So even though the declining population is a challenge, the team found that SKCTC has moved forward with a number of promising initiatives. The next institution is Hopkinsville Community College. And the report included an unvarnished analysis of the strategy set by this institution and the problems with measuring the effectiveness of those strategies. A reoccurring theme of the narrative was that the strategy was too broad or vague as it was written to measure, and that the broadness or vagueness created a strategy that was very overwhelming to execute and manage, as well as creating a lack of specific focus. This broadness made it difficult to determine measurements, analysis, and achievement of desired outcomes. This was an admission made throughout the narrative. The review committee agreed with the institution's analysis and reflected this in the scores, with lower scores being given for fidelity. However, the very real strength in this report was the lessons learned and the next steps identified by the institution. First, to propose a strategy revision with CPE that focused on targeted intentional efforts to demonstrate inclusiveness of specific underrepresented minority populations, as well as appropriately measure the strategy. And they did the hard work to look at those strategies. Even in cases where there was positive data, such as retention of underrepresented minority staff, the narrative confesses that there is not an understanding of the factors that play a role in the retention rates and that HCC needs identified goals and benchmarks. There was further soul searching and strategies such as using the Rotary Scholars Program as the sole measure to pursue underrepresented minorities. The report included a candid admission that this did not produce strong outcomes, but then took a hard look to make next step proposals for more intentional outreach to underrepresented minorities, including Black, African American, and Hispanic communities. Because of those efforts, the committee awarded 2s for lessons learned and looked forward to the strategy revisions. Our final institution is Western Kentucky University, and Western Kentucky University has developed a 10-year strategic enrollment plan, and that plan contains 9 strategies, and most of those have DEI components, and this plan borrows from those strategies. For example, a couple things to highlight. The creation of living learning communities has proven to be highly effective, and there are plans to expand this initiative. They currently have Stonewall Suites for LGBTQ plus students. They also have suites for students of color and low-income students and first-generation students. They also have an initiative called Why Not Us, which is a Black male initiative to increase the sense of belonging of Black males through intentional programming and networking. I'd also like to recognize that in the face of COVID restrictions, WKU was able to pivot with some of their recruitment efforts. Many of their original recruitment efforts were around event participation, but the COVID restrictions led to exploration of other ways to market, including digital and virtual networking. Likewise, COVID caused a pause in their hiring and provided them time to put together a work group to do some planning and formalize some new faculty, staff recruitment, and retention processes. And the team awarded all 2s for those initiatives. However, we had one question in regard to that plan. They talked about a review of their gateway courses and a redesign of their gateway courses. And while we think that's a worthy process, and there may be factors that we don't understand that are weeding out people through those gateway courses, the report said that it was an attempt toward cultural competency, and we really didn't. The committee needed some additional explanation to connect those dots for us. In addition, they had instituted a microfinancial assistance program to keep students from dropping out, and they've been very successful in collecting funds for that program, but we needed to see some measurement about whether that program was reducing the dropout due to financial distress. So overall, WKU has ambitious enrollment plans, some of which have DEI components, but the challenge is to make sure initiatives for underrepresented minorities are not just events and marketing, but continue to be intentional efforts towards sustained diversity.
Ray, well done, and the nerves sure didn't show.
Okay. I also want to thank you, Dr. Stat, for the new score sheet. That was a great addition this year.
Glad it worked for you.
Next up, we have Dr. Grace Day.
You're fine. It's Di. Yeah, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Grace Dye from Team 1. And there are another 2 members from Team 1, Dr. Robert Stat and Whitney Allen. And they really made my first year experience of reviewing the diversity reports very fun and productive. So on behalf of my team, I'm reporting the qualitative scores of the diversity reports submitted by 4 institutions, including Hazard Community and Technical College, Madisonville Community College, Somerset Community College, and Kentucky State University. We'll start with the Hazard Community Technical College. So the total qualitative score for Hazard is 70 out of 18. We have the 4 score for opportunity and success and 5 out of 6 for impact. So overall, most of the strategies listed in the report were well implemented. And our team thinks highly of a couple student-driven programs and strategies to support the student diversity, such as the Multicultural Leadership Council program at local high schools, and the strategy to recruit URM and low-income students to the President Student Ambassadors program. However, we would like to have more clarity on the barriers from the admissions process review. So far, we can see the barriers caused by COVID-19, but we would like to know if there are any other barriers to recruit URM and low-income students in general for this institution. We have one question about the implicit biases training mentioned in the report. From the data provided in the report indicating the effectiveness of the training, we see from the pre and post survey that there were 42.5% of the employees showed improvement, 42.5% of them showed no change, and 15% showed decline. A suggestion for future evaluation on the training is that the institution might want to include some open-ended questions in the survey or conduct a follow-up interview with the employees who show no change or decline to explore the employees' perceptions on the training and find out the reasons for no change or decline behind the scene. And for the part of the lessons learned for each strategy, we hope the institution will provide more information on how they would address those lessons for next steps. And next institution is Madisonville Community College, and the total qualitative score is 17 out of 18. We have the 4 scores for opportunity and impact, and 5 out of 6 for success. So overall, the goals of the strategies are ambitious and attainable. A few strategies in the report have been successfully implemented, and the data provided in the report also indicate the effectiveness of those programs, such as the strategy to increase the number of diversity recruitment events on campuses, the strategy to promote academic program and opportunities with area school districts. They also had a very effective advising interventions to support URM persistence. However, there are a few areas that they need to continue to work on, such as expanding campus programming to support low-income students. It was not quite clear to our team how those programs were implemented and how the institution moved forward with them. So for the strategy of identifying new diversity recruitment opportunities, they have made some progress, but have not completed their goal. And for the development student cultural competence, our team suggests the institution provide more data to prove how effective it is. And for the part of lessons learned for each strategy, we hope the institution will provide more information on how they would address those lessons for next steps. And next institution is the Somerset Community College. And we have 12 out of 18 for the total qualitative score. And we have 2 out of 6 for opportunity, 4 out of 6 for success, and 6 for impact. Overall, our team found that some of the narrative regarding the implementation of the strategies didn't really address the strategies very clearly. The data provided to indicate the effectiveness of the strategy was really hard to follow. And additionally, overall, we would like to see more data to indicate whether the strategies are effective or not. And some of the lessons were written in a very general form, and it's hard for our team to really understand what exactly they had learned and how they would address those lessons in the future. And next institution is the Kentucky State University, and the total qualitative score is 17 out of 18. We have the 4 score for opportunity and success, and 5 out of 6 for impact. So overall, based on the report, we see the goals of each strategy were met, and there were effective analysis of programs toward goals. And Kentucky State University made good efforts to recruit and enroll low-income URM first-generation students and improve their persistence rate. However, there's still room for improvement, especially to improve the time to graduation and increase career readiness for low-income URM first-year generation students. And some of the data provided in the report was hard to rate, such as the one they used to indicate the effectiveness of the strategy on improving the time to graduation rate for low-income first-generation URM students. So next time we suggest the institution might want to consider a more easy to read approach to present their data. So those are some of the summaries from my team regarding the qualitative scores. And thank you all for listening.
Next up, we have Dr. Fagan.
Thank you, Dr. Muff. I too want to begin by thanking my team members, Ryan Kaffenberger and Deborah Apprecio, for their help on assessing all of these institutions. It is not something that is an easy task, and I was very grateful for their help. The institutions that Team 2 reviewed were Ashland Community and Technical College, Henderson Community College, Northern Kentucky University, and South Central Community and Technical College. The first institution that we will discuss today should be Ashland Community and Technical College. Their qualitative scores were a 13 out of 18. The team indicated here with our scores the areas in which we thought that the institution had some areas for improvement. There were 11 strategies total that were reviewed. Some areas for improvement that we thought were needed might be providing additional data or evidence to support the strategies that were being discussed. Additional descriptions of the programs or the strategies would have also helped to clarify some of the narrative descriptions. Overall, the narratives themselves were an honest reflection of the efforts being made by the institution and the challenges that they were facing during the pandemic. Those strategies stretched from scholarship opportunities, implementation of the Starfish system, relationship building. Overall, it was a pleasant experience reading through those. Our more thorough feedback will be provided to the institution afterwards. Our second institution was Henderson Community College with a score of 11 out of 18. Again, the team has indicated the areas for improvement, most particularly in impact for this institution. Of the 9 strategies that were reviewed, we found some areas of improvement were needed, including clarity or additional information, providing additional needed support, such as data or more anecdotal support to help the narrative and the reviewers to understand. Overall, the institution presented information supporting their efforts. We would have liked to have seen a little bit more of connecting the dots so that the reviewers could understand both implementation and effectiveness of the strategies. Overall, though, the strategies were exciting to read through. Their efforts to increase marketing, to enhance their presence in their communities, and the provision of programs and activities surrounding the increase of diversity were wonderful to read through for the team. The third institution, Northern Kentucky University, received an 18 out of 18. This institution presented 8 strategies, everything from strengthening their recruitment to minimizing financial barriers for students, cultural competence. Overall, this institution had very well-written and articulated strategies. If there were any areas of improvement, that was noted in the feedback, and it was requests such as additional information that could have clarified areas of the narrative, or maybe a few questions about the lessons learned and how they'll impact moving forward. But overall, again, very well written, very articulated. Our final institution was South Central Community and Technical College, who also received an 18 out of 18 for qualitative scores. Our team was very pleased reading through the 5 strategies that covered expanding outreach for the institution, strengthening their academic advising, and increasing their student representation on committees. Again, this institution did a very good job. It was well written and articulated. Certain areas could have been expanded upon or possibly additional evidence provided, and those areas were noted. We did appreciate that analysis from previous years was included in some of the narratives for our first-time reviewers who weren't familiar with the strategy or what had happened in previous years. And we did also appreciate the injection of humor throughout the narratives. It does make it for a pleasurable read.
And next we have Stephanie Mayberry.
Thank you. My name is Stephanie Mayberry, and I serve as the team lead for Group 3. We reviewed the following institutions: West Kentucky Community and Technical College, University of Louisville, Maysville Community and Technical College, and Eastern Kentucky University. Overall, we were very impressed with all of the plans that were submitted to our group, but it is always a constantly evolving process to improve. So we provided feedback as far as areas of improvement going forward. I will start with West Kentucky Community and Technical College. They had an overall score of 29 out of 34, and specifically an 18 out of 18 with their qualitative scores. Overall, we were impressed with this plan. We would have provided comments for areas. We provided comments, as I mentioned. And one of the areas that we talked about was the texting platform. And in the report, the institution showed that they had elicited feedback about the preferred method of communication, and that it was via text. However, in looking at the breakdown of the numbers, not even half of the students had indicated text as their primary method of communication. So we wanted to have more information about what other methods were used, were the results disaggregated by age to see if there was a different focus for adult students versus traditional age students. And then making sure that there was a multi-pronged approach to reaching students, because not one size fits all approach would do. We also had feedback about the appreciative advising model that they offered. It is a historical narrative which talked a lot about how they got to that model, but not really enough information about how the program is being expanded across the institution, developed and adjusted to best fit student needs. Next, we had the University of Louisville, and they had an overall score of 30 out of 36 and a 17 out of 18 with the qualitative scores. What we found with that particular plan was that there were some concerns about, not really concerns, but just additional information requested about the bias training. They talked about the bias training for all of their search committees, and that they had an overall openings in the academic year of 166. We wanted to see what the results of the bias training was, to see how many of those openings resulted in a more diverse hiring group of individuals. So we wanted to see more information about that. We also saw opportunities for improvement in describing the plan. There were some scholarships that could be combined with other awards, but then other scholarships that could not be. And just really trying to evaluate that policy, what could be done differently going forward to maximize the benefit of funding for students. Also, in looking at the affordability issue, we wanted to see the institution be more intentional about making sure that students understood the incoming earning potential of earning post-secondary credentials. The next institution was Maysville Community and Technical College. We scored them an 18 out of 18 in the qualitative portion, and they had an overall score of 32 out of 34. With that, we just wanted, there were certain sections that we wanted more details about. There was a survey for a proactive academic advising, but it seemed to target students that were receiving that type of advising, and we really wanted to get the other side of that coin and get more information from students that had not participated under that model. Also, in a few areas, the lessons learned needed to be more thoughtful and reflective. There is a need for improvement in detailing the plans going forward, and there was very limited information about that. We do recognize that COVID-19 is a pandemic that we did not anticipate and was impactful for every institution across the country, but we wanted to see a little bit more innovation and creativity in adjusting to the in-person limitations rather than being okay with the impact of COVID. Let's do more, especially in the populations that were severely impacted by the impact of COVID. And then finally, we reviewed Eastern Kentucky University. They had an overall score of 32 out of 36 and an 18 out of 18 on our qualitative review. We were really impressed with what they were doing and the work that was being done at EKU. And we would recommend that the narrative be aligned with the strategy goal. We felt like there was a lot of information included in the narrative that wasn't related to the strategy. So we just be more concise in your reporting is our suggestion. That is it for our group.
Thank you. And next we have the team lead for Team 4 is Dr. Carrie Hodge.
Thank you, Dr. Devrin. This team consisted of myself and Dr. Rochelle Brown, and we looked over Big Sandy Community and Technical College, Morehead State University, Jefferson Community and Technical College, Bluegrass Community and Technical College. To start, we will go with Big Sandy Community and Technical College that had a 19 out of 34 overall score with a qualitative score of 12 out of 18. Big Sandy had 14 strategies outlined. And as you can see, their implementation scored very highly. However, when it came to effectiveness and lessons learned, they did get ones across the board. The main reason for that is while their strategies were very direct, when it came to the effectiveness of the strategies, they did not engage with every aspect outlined in the strategy. I think a good example of that is develop and promote scholarships specifically for Black, African, and Latino Hispanic students. They discussed greatly about promoting scholarships, but never the development of scholarships, which again didn't align with effectiveness. Also with the lessons learned, the lessons tended to stay very surface level and did not go into in-depth detail on what they could do to improve their strategies, how they can move forward, and again, tended to be more of a summary of the overall strategy. So in the future, we would like to see more reflection in terms of lessons learned, and also making sure that when they implement these strategies, they go and implement every aspect listed within the strategy. For Morehead State University, their overall score was a 21 out of 36, with their qualitative scores being 11 out of 18. When it came to success and impact, they tended to score on the lower side. The school had a strong understanding of implementation and how to implement a strategy. The strategies that aligned with impact were the only strategies that truly had a disconnect with fidelity. A good example again is to utilize the 2018 National Survey of Student Engagement data. It did not outline how the data was going to be examined or utilized. So therefore, overall with that strategy, it did not, what they wrote did not necessarily align with what the strategy said. They instead focused on the Higher Education Data Consortium, since the National Survey did not contain useful data. An explanation of why national survey data was not useful was never established. So they lacked true understanding of effectiveness in their descriptions, which then directly impacted their lessons learned. So to improve their strategies, the school needed overall reflection on the lessons learned. In general, you'll notice as I'm talking with all of these schools, it seemed that the lessons learned remained very surface level and did not produce actionable items or steps to improve effectiveness of strategies. The lessons learned asked institutions to describe in detail how it incorporates results from the strategies. And we just felt that Moorhead never addressed how they plan to incorporate results moving forward. Overall, the lessons learned piece lacked a description on what they learned. With Jefferson Community and Technical College, we noticed high effectiveness. Their overall score was a 28, with their qualitative scores being a 14 out of 18. This school had very clear, obtainable strategies, particularly the strategies that focus on Latin and African American students. They showed a true understanding of this student population and what they needed to be supported. In the strategies, the school showed an understanding that support goes beyond academic support. This school was one of the only schools that addressed things such as food insecurity and mental health. And we were truly impressed with their understanding that support goes outside of the classroom. And we truly applauded them for thinking beyond the classroom walls. Only one of their strategies truly read as vague, which was maintain and enhance strategies to increase success of African American students. We think that if they had really thought through their word choice, this would have been a much stronger strategy. For example, they talked about success, but never really defined what success was and how to achieve that success. But again, we truly thought they did a wonderful job thinking about things such as food insecurity and mental health. With Bluegrass Community and Technical College, their overall score was a 30, with their qualitative scores being a 15. Overall, the lessons learned here tended to be summaries. Again, as we've mentioned with some other schools, reflections and next steps tended not to be present in the lessons learned. Overall, there was a very big disconnect between the fidelity of the strategies and the effectiveness, which created a trickle-down effect with having weak lessons learned because they were unable to connect the dots per se between the strategy and the effectiveness of the strategy. They then couldn't calculate lessons learned. I'd like to, and I hope this is okay, Deborah, I'm the first person to ask this. I forgot to mention a major point with Moorhead that I had in my notes. Is it okay if I go back for a second? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I had this note and I wanted to make it. With Moorhead, one of the things we saw was the use of COVID-19 as a reason for lack of effectiveness. And we wanted to see more, I guess, adaptability from the school in terms of their strategies and how to make them effective in spite of COVID-19. It seemed that many times they were using COVID-19 as a crutch for lack of effectiveness. Meant to mention that. And that is our
Carrie, I appreciate one of the comments that you made, and I've seen it through several areas, and that is a school will write a strategy, but talk about something else.
We saw that particularly, I think it was with Big Sandy.
But every now and then I would run into something where they say they're going to do something and they talk completely about something else, or they're going to improve diversity for URMs. And then they talk about enhancing the grade point of the college, things like this. So sometimes it's a non sequitur.
Correct. I think with one of ours, they talked about wanting to reach at-risk students. I think this was Big Sandy. And then they talked about all about teaching in the prison program.
Yeah. And so the schools need to pay attention that they're answering their strategies.
Yes. And I think that was one of the major issues with Big Sandy that we saw. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Dr. Carey. Our final team is team 6, and the team leader of that team was Lisa Shimwell. Lisa, you can take it away.
Good afternoon. So I guess you're under an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage of going last is you're probably happy to hear from me. The disadvantage is you have to hear from me. But first, let me say that with Murray State, Gateway, Community and Technical College, University of Kentucky, and Elizabethtown, we were very pleased this year, like most of you that I've heard from just this afternoon. There's been great improvement. We felt like overall in the write-ups, this was my 3rd year doing it. I think there was a person on the team, it was their 2nd year, and then one person, it was I think both of the others had their 2nd year. And I want to say thanks to Missy Ross and Kim Halbear for serving on our team. And so first up is Murray State University. And in looking at Murray State, you see their scores there. If this was close to a perfect report, overall, it was a great write-up with 30 out of 36 overall, and then 17 out of 18 on the qualitative. They have some really interesting things going on for student success. Just a couple of things that highlighted was under implementation of opportunity and strategy 1. They did a great job of reviewing their top majors since 2017. They're getting some great buy-in from their campus. We were curious as to what the increased marketing efforts might be since that time in 2017, and if they aligned with the job demand, and if that would reveal anything interesting that other departments might learn from. And I think that's one thing in doing these reports is I think there's some really big value in sharing this all across campus and really drilling down on what is happening to see what others can learn. And I'm sure they're doing that. We did say that they did extremely well with increasing number of freshman students visiting the campus. We were really impressed to see the way they made use of various opportunities, including their student lead organization. The group did feel there was a slight need or a need for a slight tweak in lessons learned opportunity. I think that's the one area that they were marked down on, but it was nothing major. Everything was still done well. We just need to see a few more specific action steps. How will they expand the research? What will they do? When will they do it? Maybe include a tentative timeline to help guide. And this was really the same comment for strategies 2 and 4, just working on bringing more detail into it. Overall, it was really well written. We made some suggestions, even in the areas that they received 2s on, that can continue to help increase their details for next year that they're providing to us. And it overall was close to a perfect report. And I did want to comment, we had some discussion about with this group, this school, they made mention that they're using burning glass, or they're exploring options with burning glass. And I was really excited to see that. If you're not familiar with that, you probably should look it up. I think it's really good for the job market. It's a really good career analytics platform. And I would just suggest to them that they may want to look at My EDU since they're using burning glass, because a lot of those aligned those student platforms. So I'm not saying they necessarily need to use that, but there may be some things in that, since they're going that direction, they can really learn from My EDU. It's kind of a grade and course management platform. And what they did when they developed My EDU and burning glass, they used Clayton Christian's answered a lot of his questions that he used in his Innovator's Dilemma book. And I know that's an older book, but there's a lot of things in there that talk about what new technologies, what they do with platforms that cause firms to fail. And they've kind of crossed over with higher ed on that. And so that I think is going to be really, really exciting to see what they're doing there. So kudos to them for that. Second was Gateway Community College. And Gateway, as you can see the scores there, very close once again. Just a couple of things that we felt like needed to be tweaked with a qualitative score of 16 out of 18. Overall, they had good use of tracking what is and what is not working for their student success. Like most of you, you mentioned some type of food pantry or food service program for students, helping in that area for the needs for students. And although many colleges have started those programs, one of the things we were impressed with is how Gateway told us their plans to expand upon that and looking for the next step. And we so often forget those extended campuses, and they're looking to move that into some of the extended campus areas. So we were really excited to see that. We would encourage more targeted feedback and analysis of effectiveness under their opportunity. The information was a little more anecdotal, and we thought more a measurable approach would lend itself to a little bit more validity and allow them to provide better correlation back to their subject matter. They also, there was a few things, there was some question marks in their analysis, and we didn't really understand what those question marks meant. Was it that they weren't finished? Did they put that in there meaning to go back and fill it in later? So just a little more detail there. And we agreed with their idea of focus groups, which will really help their strategies. They have a great start with impact lessons learned. That's really good descriptions. Just once again, a little more detail on the who, what, when, why, and how, so that as outsiders are reading this, we really have an understanding of what your plan is. So other than that, and then I do want to mention that the pre and post testing there, that comment there really references more of the student success strategy particularly. And then third is UK. On this one, I'm not really sure what to say about this report. This absolutely, for lack of a better phrase, it wowed us. We were amazed. This was the easiest report that I have ever read. And it was so easy to follow. And what happened was they actually followed a true outline. Like they would have a main point and then they would have subpoints. So when you got to the second thing they were addressing, they would talk about that first subpoint and then the second subpoint, and there was no flipping back and forth. We followed it verbatim. It was just like a beautiful, I guess, pattern, you could say, that just interwove throughout. It was well written, and it was really good with content. They explored multiple resources across campus activities and multiple levels within offices, which was really, really good. The high impact strategy of the first year experience course, UK 101, they used measures of both retention to the second semester and their first term GPA, which added even more validity to their findings. We really like that multiple use of measurements within one specific strategy or activity. On the instructor evaluations, we left you a little question there because we were wondering, since you all had such a higher yield as opposed to other departments across campus, we know that one-on-one courses tend to have more of an instructor-student higher level of engagement, but we wondered if maybe you could look at forth and to go, oh, okay, this is where they mentioned this. But if you're doing it organized, we can find it easily, and it causes us not to make mistakes in trying to ask questions you may have already addressed. So, but your initial prep in this organization paid off. You took time to identify and clarify your baseline goals for us, which were really, really good. It allowed you to know what you were working from, so you could draw pertinent conclusions to each item and how you were achieving your goals. And then we really appreciated the case management approach you were doing. And we like the WIG, or Wildly Important Goal Initiative. It's a great concept and excellent student success strategy. It's really obvious that you put a lot of work into your impact strategy of increasing cultural competence. Our one suggestion for next year is consider some pre-testing and post-testing. Just a job. This is just, it was another one of those good reports. So all 4 reports were well done, as I've said. It's evident, I think, that the institutions are working around a challenging year, or at least in our case with these 4 schools, and they still found ways to meet their goals. There was so much of, we planned to do this with COVID, but since COVID, here's what we did instead. And I say, great job on that. And I just would reiterate that all schools really, continue your well-organized format as well as good substance in the reporting.
Thank you, Lisa. I will turn the meeting over here in just a moment to Dr. Muff for his concluding comments. But one of the things that I know Devron and Don are working on, or have been, we talked about it last year, is that all of these good ideas that come out of these reports, there's a certain commonality to all the reports with some of these ideas. And they're going to be assembling those for a best practices type document.
That is correct.
Devron, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So once again, I want to thank all of our team leads for all the hard work that you all did. I'm just really impressed with the thorough feedback that you all gave to the institutions this year. So for the next steps in this process, those institutions who score below the threshold, they are not eligible to apply for new academic programs in the fall without requesting a waiver. Information on requesting a waiver will be sent to those institutions by July 2021. And so that information will come after our next meeting in June. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Dawn Offit to talk about the cultural competency certification process.
Thank you, Dr. Muff. I wanted to take the opportunity to follow up with a conversation that we have had in terms of the cultural competency certification process. We mentioned it in our last meeting, and I just want to take a few minutes to give you a follow-up with that. Next slide, please. So this is just a reminder. We know that the policy states, and we're talking about our 2016 Kentucky Public Post-Secondary Policy for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We know that the policy states that in order for us to live and thrive in a diverse campus environment and in an increasingly diverse world, students, faculty, and staff must become culturally competent. We know that our institutions have intentionally put strategies in their diversity plans to reflect how they are going to implement and work with cultural competence on their institutions, at their institutions. And we knew that one of the things and strategies that we gave them in the policy was that they were able to implement a cultural competence certification process and program. But what we decided to do at the state level is to make sure that we were able to help them and make sure that we were consistent in what we were doing by ensuring that we have a statewide process so that there is some consistency, there are some standards that we're using in an effort to be one of the first states, if you will, to be able to say, here's what we're doing in cultural competence, here's what we're doing statewide. We've got institutions that are on board that agree with these standards, and we want to make sure that we are showcasing how important it is to the state of Kentucky and what we're going to do with that. So next slide, please. One of the questions that we get so what? Why do we need to do this? Why are we doing this? And we're doing this because of several benefits. One of the benefits that this cultural competence certification process has is neutral and independent third-party verification. So institutions that take their program and they opt to have it certified by the council's process will be able to ensure that the credential that's the certification that's awarded to their credential is state recognized, nationally recognized. We know that it's independent in its certification. That will have some substantial and significant weight as individuals who boast their credential and they're able to showcase it as being certified. They know that it will be, they know they can rest assured that it will be well recognized and well received. It also, along the same lines, has consistency in the currency and portability, so that students that receive their credentials that are certified by the state can show employers that they have this credential. Employers have been talking to us about these employability skills, and they've been stating that these are cultural competence is one of the employability skills that they look for with their students. So their potential employees. So this will be able to, they'll be able to showcase this with employers. They'll also be able to transfer it from institution to institution, provided that Kentucky institutions opt to have their program certified. And then Kentucky has been on the forefront of cultural competence for a while, and this positions the state of Kentucky as a leader in cultural competence. And so it offers a lot of benefits to being able to have your program certified. Next slide, please. So just to reiterate, we know that the cultural competency certification framework is based on the 8 of the 4th model of cultural competence. And the 8 of the 4th model has those 4 components: awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and action, where awareness is the who you are, and the who you are in terms of not only who you are and who you bring to the setting in a meeting, but also who do you work with and who do they bring to the setting. The acknowledgement is the how you are. How are you the same? How are you different from others that you're working with? The acceptance is why you are. Why do you have the beliefs and the traditions and the values that you have? And why also do you assign judgment for those who fall into cultural categories other than the one that you identify with? And then finally, action. What are you going to do with it? What skills do you need to effectively work and work effectively with others? So you'll see the mission statement. The mission statement was developed by the Cultural Competence Work Group, and that particular work group, we wanted to make sure that we recognize that work and the mission that was put into that particular mission statement. Next slide, please. So as I said, that was just a brief review of the cultural competence process. And so let's talk a little bit about credentialing. So in order for our process, in order to have your institution to have their program certified, they have to be able to have their program, be able to award a micro-credential that is at least 6 hours. And the way that we have broken it down into those 6 credit hours is that when they apply and they are demonstrating their alignment with their programming, that the learning outcomes and the competencies, the modules that fall under awareness and acknowledgement, the first 2 components of the 8 of the 4th, they would have to meet those learning outcomes and those modules in order to have a minimum of 6 credit hours. They have to demonstrate how they would be able to do that in their program. And then if an institution or student, either one, wants to have a second micro-credential, then in that micro-credential would be the second component, the second set of components, the action and the acceptance and the action. And so the first 2, awareness and acknowledgement, would be a prerequisite for acceptance and action. And so that's how we have divided them to be a minimum of at least 6 credit hours per micro-credential. Now, with that in mind, I understand that there are some institutions that have in their policies that to be awarded a micro-credential, they have to have a minimum of 12 hours. And so we can work with that. And in my opinion, having 12 hours, which would be all 4 components, is the optimal thing to do. But I had to make sure that when we brought the work group together, the cultural competence work group together, we asked them to identify what would be the minimum competencies, what would be the minimum standards to receive a micro-credential, and those first 2 under awareness and acknowledgement fall into that particular category. And so there are some ways that we can work with either having the 6 hours for 2 micro-credentials or having a complete one with 12 hours. We can make sure that we work that out. That's not a problem. And then next slide, please. So then what does that mean in terms of the proposal process? So for our proposal process, then if any institution opts to have to submit a proposal, they have to make sure that their program is in alignment with the 8 of the 4th model, with the learning outcomes, with the modules and the competencies that are outlined in the proposal process. Once an institution submits a proposal, then it will be reviewed by the Cultural Competency Advisory Council. This advisory council is made up of faculty and staff from our institutions, and they will review the proposed materials and provide feedback within 10 working days. Throughout this process, there may be some requirement to answer extra questions and clarify some items, but within 10 working days. And once they do that, then the CPE staff will make a recommendation to the Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee, the ASI committee, that this credential from this institution be certified. And once they make that recommendation, the next step will be that it will be put on the agenda for the ASI meeting for approval. So that is how the process is outlined. And of course, we have a document that gives more information and more specifics to this that we can make sure we share. It's at this point. Next slide, please. At this point, we're sharing this information with you. The next point is to present this cultural competence certification, credential certification process to the ASI committee at their June meeting for approval. And once approved, then we will be able to identify some pilot programs to participate in the certification process. And our hope is that we're able to have a pilot program to launch in the fall of 2021. So are there any questions at this time?
Yes, Dawn. You talk about 6 hours or 6 credit hours, 12 hours or 12 credit. If it's 6 credit hours, that's a 2 major courses at a university. Do these carry academic credits, or am I missing something? I was first under the impression that the program took 6 hours, but now you're saying credit hours, which could be different. Could you clarify that?
So we have listed credit hours in terms of how it is defined as a micro-credential in the policy 1, and with the micro-credential definition of what some institutions have already created. So if I need to clarify that, I can make sure that I do that.
Well, okay, I still don't understand. Is it an actual hour or is it a credit hour, which 6 hours would be a course 2 semesters long, 3 credits each, and it would be meeting 40, 50 times a semester.
So we're looking at being able to, when we're saying credit hours, we're looking at not just being in attendance for 6 hours. We're looking at that credit hour, that length of time where they meet, we're saying substantially, but again, that is the institution themselves they are able to propose how students are going to meet these requirements. So they have the flexibility in that, but the goal is for it to carry that weight for credit, yes. So it's not just a time period where they have to have 6 hours in terms of time, but yes, to receive that credit.
So if I just heard you right, it would be the same as taking 2 semesters of organic chemistry at 3 credit hours each.
Yes, yes, for the credit hour. But
Yes.
it might not be a course that way. It depends on if the institution can say, okay, well, we have already in our course content, we have a course called, I don't know, Cultural Competency 101 that already meets these needs. If a student takes that course, then that would be that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and they can embed these tenets in an existing course as well.
Correct.
As long as the they can show that they're meeting the criteria set forth in the outline, and they may be an existing course, they may create a new course specifically for this, but we wanted to make sure that this was especially for the students to be part of a credit bearing course, so that they would actually get college credit for it, and not something that would be outside of the classroom that they would do on the side perhaps to get some sort of a badge or something. This is actually going to be a certificate that is awarded through the awarding of college credit.
And we have some institutions that are currently working on these programs.
Okay,
And so that's already exciting.
thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you, Don. 21 at 1 p.m. via Zoom. But Don, do you have any feeling when we might be back in person?
I do not. I know that right now we're operating, again, everything is virtual. I know there have been discussions, but to my knowledge, nothing has been finalized. So we will
I'd heard a rumor of April, but I don't think we're going to make that in the next 6 days.
I don't think so.
5 day, whatever it is. Anyway, I'll adjourn the meeting and root for your favorite horse on Saturday at the Derby. Adios. Everybody can punch leave and be done. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.